let's look at the weakening an argument, right? So again, the same thing as what we said. We need to have that additional point which will actually be negative, basically counters the core argument of the author, which is not agreeing to whatever is the core argument made by the author. It counters the argument made by the author, right? It should be like, weaken that. It should rather, prove him wrong or make him make his statement less strong, weak, and etc. Let's look at the same case, right? Scientists do not work in noisy place. So this is the argument he's saying. Therefore, Emily does not work in a noisy place. This is the conclusion. The argument is this. Basically, the author says that scientists do not work in a noisy place. Let's say that the statement it says research proved that brain works best, right, with lot of noise around it. Okay, let's say that this is one of the statements that you look at. Research proved that brain works best with a lot of noise around it. What does this actually say? This is actually countering it, right? Because it says scientists do not work in noisy place, fair enough. But then there's a lot of research that says that brain works the best with a lot of noise around it. That means the brain works the best in noisy place than a silent place. So scientists also should be ideally prefer working in noisy place so that their brain also works the best. So this is like an additional point which would counter this. Is this absolutely right? Maybe not, I'm just trying to give an example to just show you how an additional point can weaken an argument, right? So we are not trying to make it a factual thing or something like that. And you have to understand, forget about the real world facts. You just have to stick to what's given in the paragraph and what are the options you have, and only have to use that. Even if it's completely counterintuitive, you got to use only those information as the facts and solve the question. Do not try to use the brain or the knowledge you have outside the given piece of information. Let's look at this one, right? Company X developed a product, uses a metal that's toxic to kids. In order to protect our kids, we need to ban the use of product. Let's say there's an additional point that's, added, which says, okay, the new product can be manufactured, right, by another metal B, which is not toxic to kids, right? It says new product can be manufactured by metal B, which is not toxic to kids. Or let's say the statement says a new alternative is found for metal A, right, which is not toxic. So this, if is true, right, new alternative is found for metal A which is not toxic, true, then why should we ban the product? Because a new alternative is found, the company can use this to manufacture this product which is not toxic to kids, hence there is no need to ban the product, right? Statements like this, or maybe there is a lot of research which said that new product is not used by kids, or not touched by kids, So if it's not touched by kids or it's not being used by kids, how would that impact kids if it's not used by kids? So how would that be toxic to the kids, because they are not going to touch or use it? Hence there will be no problem for them and there will be no need for banning the product, right? Statements like this would actually weaken the argument or counter the core argument of this passage, right? So let's look at this example. So offshore oil drilling operations involve an unavoidable risk of an oil spill, but importing oil on tankers presently involves an even greater risk, such risk per barrel of oil. So we are comparing two things. Offshore oil drilling, it's like doing it in seashores, etc. Operations involve an unavoidable risk of an oil spill. So whenever you do those operations, there's a risk that oil can spill and get into the water and make a lot of problem for aquatic and humans as well. So that's why the statement says it involves an unavoidable risk. It's not possible to completely avoid it. But importing oil on tankers, that is like you do it somewhere else on shore, then you got to transport it to some other countries or etc. through water bodies on tankers, presently involves an even greater such risk per barrel of oil. So it's saying that offshore oil spill is less than transport in tankers. That's what the author is arguing in this first statement. So if we are to lessen the risk of an oil spill without reducing our oil usage, so if assume that there is no way I can cut down my oil usage, So the other thing is to lessen the risk of oil spill. To maintain the same amount of production, we got to select one of these two options, right? Assuming these are the only two choices we have, we do not want to cut down our usage. So the only choice is to actually invest more in offshore operations, right? We must invest more in the offshore operations and import less oil tankers. So prefer this is what the author is concluding, because he says that oil spill is more in offshore, less in offshore drilling than in oil tankers. So it says if which of the following if true weakens the argument, right? The core argument is this, that the offshores is less spill than the transportation on tankers per barrel of oil. Hence it's better to invest in offshore operations is what the conclusion is. So let's try to understand these options, right? Importing oil on tankers is currently less expensive than drilling for it offshore. Could be, right? But how does it even matter, right? Not relevant. Why? Because it's actually core argument is not related to money. It's related to the risk of oil spill, which is not being, attacked or in any way by this thing. Yes, it could be less expensive. So what? Because the author is not talking about us saving money or making it more efficient in terms of money, right? It's more about reducing the oil spill, making it efficient in that sense. So hence option A is not attacking the core argument. Tankers can easily be redesigned so that their use entails less risk of an oil spill. This seems to be a good statement. See, tankers can easily be redesigned so that their use entails less risk of an oil spill. So all the while the author has been talking about, current tankers are, possess a greater risk of oil spill, etc. Here the new additional point says, tankers can easily be redesigned so that their use entails less risk of an oil spill. Maybe if this new design of tankers make it better than the offshore, right? So if this is true, then obviously this will weaken this core argument that offshore is showing less oil spill than transport tankers. Maybe the new design will be much better than the offshore operation, so this will weaken it. Let's look at the other two options also. The impact of offshore operations on environment can be reduced by careful management. Okay, but then this would not weaken, right? Because already the author's core argument is that offshore is better than the transportation. So impact of offshore operations can be reduced by careful management is sort of not weakening it. Again, nope. Oil spills caused by tankers have generally been more serious than those caused by offshore operations. And this, if at all anything, is actually strengthening the argument, right? Because the argument is that offshore is better than transport tankers because of less oil spill. Now the author, this additional point is basically saying that oil spills in tankers caused by tankers are more serious than offshore operations. So this is more like strengthening. If there was a question asking which of the following strengthens, I would select this. Because weakening, I should select B.